Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. I'm Mayor MacArthur, Art and Cultural Director of Japan House Los Angeles. Today, we're delighted to have our special guests, Iwao Uehara and Ben Page, for the third webinar relating to our current exhibition, Reconnecting, A Vision of Unity by Kengo Kito. The discussion today will explore the Japanese practice of forest bathing, or Shinrin-ryōhō, and show how it can help us reconnect with nature and with ourselves. But before we meet our guests, I'd like to introduce President of Japan House LA, Yuko Kaifu, who will say a few words of welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, everyone. I wish to welcome you all to today's webinar. Some of you may have already visited our current exhibition, Reconnecting, A Vision of Unity by Kengo Kito, which celebrates reconnecting with our friends, families, and communities after a long period of isolation. But it's not just with people and communities that we're getting reconnected. During our pandemic, restrictions kept many of us indoors and to wear masks, even when outdoors. Now, more people are going out, taking a walk and traveling out to breathe in a fresh air and enjoy nature, its beauty, and its healing qualities. Favorite part of my pastimes too. We feel so refreshed and happy when we go out and do forest bathing or Shinrin-yoku. But I've never realized why it is so soothing to be in a forest. Today's guest speakers, Professor Iwao Uehara, joining in from Tokyo, and local forest bathing guide and expert, Ben Page, will provide us all the answers and advice to make our experiences of forest bathing even more enriching. And I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to the program myself. I will now hand it over back to Mayor to introduce these excellent speakers today. I hope you enjoy the program. Mayor, back to you.
Thank you, Yuko. First, I'd like to go over some housekeeping. So please turn your attention to the screen. Now, for this webinar, everyone is muted and videos are turned off, but please feel free to engage with each other via the chat function. However, if you'd like to ask some questions to the speakers today, please use the Q&A function and not the chat function for the questions, and submit your questions in English. And we'd like to remind you all that this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted at a later date on the Japan House Los Angeles website for you to enjoy again afterwards and share with your friends. Now, it's my great pleasure to start our conversation about forest bathing. The term Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, was coined in the 1980s by the Japanese Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries to encourage citizens of Japan to take walks in the forest, because walking in nature has been found to have many positive effects, including lowering heart rate and blood pressure, strengthening the immune system, and reducing depression. Now, 40 years on, forest bathing is practiced worldwide. And today we're welcoming Professor Iwao Uehara, who has been an important figure in the evolution and spread of the practice of forest therapy, an advanced form of forest bathing. He'll be joined by Ben Page, a Los Angeles-based forest bathing guide, who will share some thoughts about forest bathing here in the United States. Then we'll take some questions from the audience. So our first guest, Iwao Uehara, is a professor at the Tokyo University of Agriculture and president of Japan's Society of Forest Amenity and Human Health Promotion. In 1999, he founded Forest Therapy, Shinrin-ryōhō, which advanced the concept of forest bathing to include not only human health, but also the health of the forests themselves. Since then, forest therapy, Shinrin-ryōhō, has been practiced all over the world, and Dr. Uehara has been a keynote speaker and a trainer at symposia and workshops in many countries. Welcome, Uehara Sensei.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for kind introduction about me. Hello, everyone. I am Iwao Uehara. I'm very glad and I'm very happy to attend this special meeting and seminar. Okay, today I'm going to present about forest therapy in Japan and its possibility in the United States of America. At first, let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Iwao Uehara. My first name, Iwao, means a big rock. And my family name, Uehara, means upper field. So my name means a big rock on the upper field. I was born in 1964 in Nagano City. We had Winter Olympic Game in Nagano City in 1998. Do you remember? I studied at Michigan State University, Department of Forestry as an exchange program student. And now I'm a professor of Tokyo University of Agriculture. My major is forest science, silviculture, and of course, forest therapy and counseling. This is my email address and my blog address. I began my forest therapy in 1993. So today's agenda in 20 minutes. What is forest bathing? In Japanese, Shinrin-yoku. What is forest therapy? Shinrin-ryōhō in Japanese. Then, how to practice forest bathing and how to practice forest therapy. I show you some case studies of forest therapy in Japan. And last, possibility in the United States about forest therapy. Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, is one of the main themes of today. It was made and defined in 1982 by Japan Forestry Agency. But why? Why Japan Forestry Agency made this Shinrin-yoku word? Because sea bathing, hot spring was so popular in Japan at that time. But actually, forest was not so popular in Japan. Then, president of Japan Forestry Agency, he thought, we need new advertisement word. Okay, how about forest bathing? Please welcome to the forest like a sea bathing. Take a green shower and enjoy. Okay, forest bathing is good word. And he made. So Shinrin-yoku was an advertised word, actually, at first. Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, like this. Enjoy forest freely. So if you want to take a forest bathing, you just go to forest and enjoy your time as much as you need. Many experiments have been attempted so far. For example, brain waves, blood pressure, immune system, salivary amylase, and so forth. We have explained about that before my presentation. Effects of Shinrin-yoku. Many people asked me, how often should we go to forest? What kind of forests are suitable for forest therapy or forest bathing? And how should we spend in the forest? That kind of question I was asked many times, but it depends on the person and the forest, because forest and us human beings are so diverse, so variety. Forest bathing is not almighty too. Next, Shinrin-ryōhō, forest therapy, is another main theme of today. Japanese Forest Society, I presented and I defined this technical word at this society in 1999. I defined this forest therapy as one of the natural therapies, including relaxation, occupational activities, counseling, rehabilitation, and treatment in the forest. Forest therapy makes both the forest and human beings healthier. It's a big important point. This picture, she's a dementia and she's a nurse. She is taking care of her in the forest. They are my first clients in Nagano Prefecture. Both of them have disabilities, but they try to plant cherry trees in the forest, occupational activities. If you think to practice forest therapy, at first, you need purpose. Why do clients need forest therapy? Why do you need forest therapy? Rehabilitation, treatment, counseling, relaxation. Someone want to lose weight? Purpose, at first, you need. Next, method. You have to make appropriate programs for each client and each purpose precisely. And what kind of forests are suitable for the purpose? Conifer forest, deciduous woods, artificial natural forest, bright or dark, big or small, tended or untended. What kind of forests are suitable for the purpose? And the first step, Client's reaction, very important. You must estimate appropriately the reaction by the forest therapy. Okay, I show you some case studies in Japan. Case number 1, utilize abandoned forest nearby the local hospital. This is a local hospital in Kyushu Island of Japan. This hospital has 2 forests, cedar forest and cypress stands, but they are typical abandoned forest like this, no vegetation and dark inside. This is another cypress stand and typical abandoned forest. Inside is so dark and no vegetation. This kind of artificial forest causes land erosion or soil erosion. This picture is a healthy artificial cypress stand with human treatment such as thinning, cutting, pruning, and sunlight is coming to flower vegetation, and much more natural vegetation is coming up. So we began to prepare for the forest therapy. Medical staff of this local hospital surveyed the forest conditions, tree height, diameter, density of the stands. Next, we began to treat the abandoned forest, thinning, cutting, pruning. Then, this abandoned forest has been changed brighter and healthier than before, and natural vegetation has come back. We utilize branches for occupational therapy. Patients made cutting like this. We utilized branches and leaves for making animal water too. This is a Japanese berry. Probably you know that. This berry decreasing high blood pressure and preventing the palsy. Of course, it had sweet fruits. This berry is in United States too. Probably you can find this berry near the suburb of Los Angeles too. And we can make herb tea from this berry too. We set this kind of recreation spaces in the abandoned forest. We made plural, and they are easy access from the hospital building. In this time, walking was rehabilitation for the clients, and they enjoyed forest amenities through the year. Rehabilitation for dementia. She's 19 years old patient. She has very heavy dementia, and she hesitated to go outside before making this place. But now she's attending this forest therapy in the forest, and the nurse is taking care of her in the forest like this. Okay, effects of this case. Anyway, decreased BPSD, symptoms of dementia by combination with other therapies. And clients had many choices of forest therapies. And medical staff did multiple estimation about changing with the clients. Next, case 2, school teachers. Japanese teachers are so tired. How about American teachers or in other countries? Teachers are fine or tired? More than 5,000 teachers have depression and suspension from school. It's amazing. The main reason is monster parents, naughty students? No. Main reason is colleagues. Communication and relationship with colleagues is the main reason. Then I made forest therapy programs with a school nurse at this junior high school teachers. Forest walking, exercise, relaxation, another relaxation with trees, solo time in the forest. We use stress check monitor, salivary amylase we measured. This is a figure before and after the forest therapy. Teacher A through teacher K. Teacher K, his stress was extremely high before forest therapy session, but after that, his stress decreased greatly like this. What kind of a teacher? Teacher K, can you guess? He is a principal of this junior high school. So principal has a great stress every day by forest therapy. Many teachers could change of air by forest therapy. Solo time was so comfortable, but relationship teachers could talk each other in the forest therapy session. so they can change of air from daily working place. So principal set regular forest therapy days in this junior high school after this forest therapy session. Next case in Fukushima. By the way, Japan is one of the worst countries of suicide. Annually, about 25,000 people died by suicide in Japan. This is Japan, this is USA. So Japan is twice as much as USA, very high. So this case in Fukushima, we did forest therapy for preventing suicide. The leaflets of preventing suicide, especially for middle and elder males in Fukushima. Also treating dementia, working in local forest, occupational activities in the beach forest, and relaxation. She is a medical nurse. This is Japanese natural beach forest, and this is private forest, not public forest. Here is peace and comfortable floor. You can lay down on the floor. This guy is snoring on the floor. Who is this guy? He is a forest instructor and guide, but he went to sleep on the floor. So everyone is waiting for his awakeness, and his friend is in trouble. Please wake up, my friend. So effects of this case, we utilized local private beach forest and decreased suicide number by forest therapy. Also, rehabilitation of dementia we could. And we discovered local environment in this town. Again, how to practice forest therapy. At first, assessment for clients. Next, we need method and program. Anyway, practice. What kind of forest, how long, how distance, how frequency, team and collaboration. Not only forest staff, but also medical doctors or social welfare staff are needed to make programs. And at last, estimation, how clients change it by forest therapy and feedback to the program. There are two forest therapy in Japan, Shinrin-ryōhō. It is original one. I explained about it, so I defined it in 1999 at Japanese Forest Society. Another one, Shinrin therapy. So both forest therapy were translated in English forest therapy, but in Japanese, Shinrin-ryōhō, Shinrin therapy. It's different. This Shinrin therapy was established in 2005 in public. It's a trademark of business. Private foundation manage Shinrin therapy, forest base, forest road with trademark. Shinrin therapy become a new business. Of course, it has great possibility in the USA because there are many kinds of beautiful forests in the United States of America. Possibility of forest therapy in USA, at first, escape from busy city life and COVID-19, of course. Care and rehabilitate your body and mind in the forest. Wilderness is a big advantage of the United States to reset your lifestyle. Of course, treatment for disabilities and illness in the forest. For example, how about counseling with depressed students or depressed workers in the forest? How about rehabilitations for disabilities or illness? How about changing air from the city, busy city life and COVID-19? Good place for escape from COVID-19. Forest bathing and forest therapy will be end as a trend, or they will fix in our ordinary life. It depends on our humanity. I written many books about forest therapy. Some of them have been translated in Taiwan, also in Beijing, in Korea, translated too. But unfortunately, not translated in English. So in near future, translated or I will write in English. Please visit our society too, the Society of Forest Amity of Human Health Promotion in Japan. Let's make forest and us human beings healthier. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iwao-san. That was fascinating. It's so interesting to see the different ways that you've used the forest to heal so many different types of people and also use the people to heal the forest. Now I'd like to introduce our second guest, Ben Page, to give his comments on your talk. Now, Ben is a forest therapy guide. He's a global advocate for the practice of forest bathing and the author of a newly released book called Healing Trees, A Pocket Guide to Forest Bathing. That was written in English and it was published in June of this year by Simon & Schuster, so it's now available. Ben is the founder of Shinrin-Yoku LA and Integral Forest Bathing and has been guiding forest therapy walks since 2015. He's trained hundreds of forest bathing guides around the world and has been featured in such publications as Women's Health, USA Today, Good Morning America, The Washington Post, and the website WebMD. Welcome, Ben. It's great to have you with us. I'd love it if you can share with us some of your thoughts about Iwao-san's presentation and how forest bathing has been adopted and adapted here in Southern California.
Absolutely. Well, good morning and good evening, everyone. I just want to say I met Uehara sensei at a conference in Finland many years ago, and I got to see where this presentation was then, and seeing it several years later, it's just as exciting and innovative and groundbreaking. And it's really fascinating because listening to his presentation, I note that a lot of our methodology is very different, but that we approach the work with the same sort of ethical heart, which is to help people and forests. That there's a way of working with the land and having a sense of reciprocity with the land so that the healing is parallel. It's not an extractive process of looking to nature and saying, oh, there's human health benefits to be had here. How do we take them? And instead thinking, well, how do we form healthy relationships between people and nature so that they take care of each other? That's for me the really exciting thing that's at the core of all of this work. So I guess I should start out by saying my work is informed by the training and certification of a group called the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy, which was started in 2012. I was the director of training of that organization for several years, and I ran around the world training guides. The ANFT has trained, I think, over 1,500 guides in 54 countries now. So it's very exciting work, and it's inspired by the Japanese practice of Shinrin-Yoku and then has kind of a Western interpretation of the framework. So our core motto is the forest is the therapist, the guide opens the doors. And I think it's important to say this first of all, because I am not a therapist, but the way I think about my work is facilitating a space where people can feel safe and vulnerable enough to cultivate relationships with beings in nature. And then the healing is really embedded in those relationships. So a big part of this is about changing people's perceptions about nature. And one of the things that I feel really inspired about by the Japanese culture is their relationship with nature. In a lot of my research, I've noticed that for a lot of reasons that it would take too much time to unpack now, the Western relationship with nature has been very confrontational and adversarial and objectifying. And the Eastern one, and in particular the Japanese one, has this air of friendship with the natural world that confers upon beings in nature their own selfhood and subjectivity. So in the West, when we're climbing a mountain, we might use the language of conquering the mountain, whereas in Japan, they might say, I made good friends with the mountain. So just thinking about that language, we can see that in the first one, nature is simply an object to be conquered, but in the latter, the mountains have their own sense of selfhood and identity. So in my work, the primary question I'm exploring is how do we really motivate people to want to form relationships with nature? How do we essentially get closer to that Japanese attitude where we're not looking at nature as an object or as an adversary, but as a companion and a friend? And the thing that I've noticed over the years, I always say when training people, you can't open a rose with a crowbar. You can't force something beautiful to happen or make someone fall in love or make someone force a friendship. So it takes a lot of spaciousness and gentleness. And so a lot of my work is just helping people relax into a state of embodied relaxation. It's really more about not doing than it is about doing. And I think that when people kind of remember how to slow down and awaken their senses and truly relax, something really incredible happens. And I use this word remember because I think this is all stuff that we're born with. There's nothing particularly skillful about it. You don't have to learn a complicated technique. Really, it's just remembering what it feels like to slow down. But that's the thing about the United States, particularly in Los Angeles. I'm sure those of you in LA can appreciate this. Slowing down and relaxing is not easy. We don't live in a culture that values rest and relaxation and slowness. We're always trying to achieve something. We're never really giving ourselves permission to rest. And so this inability to slow down creates kind of this neurotic hyper attention and a strong reaction to boredom. I was thinking about as a kid, I used to look out the window of the car for hours and just be in that state of deep attention, just sustained deep attention for hours and hours and hours. And now I notice that if I have a minute to spare, I'm reflexively grabbing at my phone. And now I'm very self-conscious about this. I notice how resistant I am to just being bored and being relaxed and being tired and just being here and just allowing that to happen. So I notice we're addicted to our busyness. Sometimes people say, why should I come on a walk with you? I say, well, if you can do this kind of thing by yourself, you certainly shouldn't come on a walk with me. But I notice a lot of the clients I work with, they just have forgotten how to relax. They don't know how to rest, and they need the permission and support. So I think when people do this kind of deep relaxation, they start to pay attention to the world, and they start to notice that we live in a natural world, that we are not just observers of nature, but that we are participants as nature. And when we have this realization, I find it causes what I believe is a somatic reaction. It's deeper than our psychology. And it's best characterized by this fabulous phrase that there's a Korean Swiss philosopher named Byung-Chul Han, and he calls this we tiredness. He puts this in contrast to I tiredness, which is a tiredness that is isolating and makes us feel alone and exhausted. Part of this is an exhaustion of being ourselves, that we're constantly striving to be and become the best versions of ourselves, that we actually can become tired of being ourselves. And he contrasts this with a state of we tiredness that he says is kind of a disarming tiredness that doesn't say I'm tired of you, but I'm tired with you. And it's not only a state of tiredness, but a connecting tiredness that allows us to be in the world where the sense of separation begins to dissolve and we feel at home in that tiredness and supported to do the work of resting and rejuvenating, because all of nature is doing this as well. There is a writer named Peter Hanke, and he takes this a step further by saying that fundamental tiredness can actually suspend ecological isolation and found a community that needs no kinship. This is a really powerful idea for me. I think if we could actually relax into that sense of tiredness, this is where there's a sense of our perception changing. This for me is kind of the root of where we talk about, well, what is good for humans and forests? How do we combine their interests? And part of it is that humans need to really understand that they are enmeshed in this world, that they're not separate from it. And that illusion of separation is really where most of our modern problems come from. There was a researcher named Guy Speth who has this wonderful quote. He says something along the lines of, I used to think that our biggest ecological problems were deforestation and climate change and ocean acidification, and that with 20 years of good education, we could solve those problems. He continues to say, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems we're facing are greed, apathy, and selfishness. And we scientists don't necessarily know how to fix that. So for me, forest bathing is kind of a subjective activism. It's not so much about changing the world around us as much as it is about changing the way that we see and experience reality, so that we understand that we are nature and understand the full implications of the web of relationships that we exist in. It's really a matter of just becoming sensitive to what it means to be nature. And I think that's really the height of what's possible with this practice. And it's why I practice it and why I enjoy sharing it with others. Now I'd like to get into some conversation with Uehara sensei. I had a couple of questions about your presentation.
Okay.
So I'm curious, Uehara-san, is forest bathing and forest therapy something for everyone? Or is it something that only some people kind of need to do? And how do you talk to people about, is this a practice that is beneficial for everyone? Or is it really for special reasons that people should do it?
Yes, thank you very much for asking me questions, Ben. Of course, forest bathing and forest therapy, both of forest activities are practiced for everyone. But sometimes clients need special treatment in the forest. That time I use the forest therapy. But usually forest bathing is perfect. I think so.
And you had said that Shinrin-yoku forest bathing is essentially just go enjoy time in the forest. So when people do forest bathing, are there any techniques or are there guides that take people out to show them how to do this? Or in Japan, when people talk about doing forest bathing, is it always that they are just kind of going and taking a walk by themselves or with their family and friends?
You don't need any technique to do forest bathing. Just go to forest, just enjoy as much as you want and you need in your style.
Right. It's so interesting because a lot of times when people come on my walks afterwards, they'll say, you know, I think if I had come here and you hadn't been here with me, within the first 5 minutes, I think I would have gotten anxious that I was wasting my time and that I should be doing something productive. And then they can't relax because they're very stressed out about relaxing. Do you find that that is something that if someone feels stressed out about relaxing, is that a good reason for them to do forest therapy?
Yeah, I think so. If I were you, probably I ask the condition of the client before the forest therapy anyway. Why do you have such stress? I'm asking probably, yes.
And do you find that a lot of people that you work with have a lot of stress where relaxation is very challenging?
Yes, I think so. Especially today's case studies, teachers in Japan. Many teachers have big stress every day. So
Yes.
they need, yeah.
Same thing here. Teachers are very stressed. They have a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
So do you think that people who have stressful jobs, maybe this is a good practice for all people that have stressful work? And do you do programs with people from, say, a particular company or a particular school and everyone does it?
Probably not everyone. The important point is the clients like forest, or clients say, yes, I'd like to go to forest. Some clients, no, I don't need to go to forest. I hate mosquitoes. I hate bugs. That times I do not bring clients to the forest.
It's interesting in my work. Sometimes I get people that hate forest. And then by the end of the walk, something happens and they fall in love with the forest. But I would do a walk maybe for 3 hours. And for the first 2.5 hours, they'd be very unhappy. And then at the very end, I had this one walk. It was very funny. I had a man come who was an executive. He was very busy and very stressed out. And he did not want to slow down and he did not want to relax. And at the end of the walk, I sent them out to go sit with a tree. And this man came back and told this story. He said, I was looking at the tree and I saw all these ants walking along the tree. And I saw them and I thought to myself, if I were in charge of these ants, I would manage them much better than they are being managed right now. And then he stopped and said, wow, why do I need to control the ants? And it was like this experience became a mirror for him. Like he saw how he was making everything more stressful than it had to be. So then all of his resistance kind of melted away, and then he became so much more open. You know, this other thing about, I was curious about the teachers. You talked about how the teachers had bad communication with each other. What was it about forest therapy that helped them talk to each other? Why do you think that nature or the forest helps people heal their relationships with each other?
Yes, I asked the bad relationship teachers, both of them. Usually, you two do not talk each other completely, but today you could talk each other. Why? Do you know the reason? And they said, today we were afraid of the forest. We were worried in the forest. Then we could talk each other. They said so.
Wow. So they just had to relax, and then it was easier.
Team feeling,
Yes.
sharing their feeling in the forest.
Yes. One of the things that I often talk about in training people is that when we think about nature, human beings are also nature, right? So
Yes.
there's no nature connection without human connection. Sometimes do you find people who want to come on a forest bathing or forest therapy walk, they don't want to talk to other people? They really want to just be by themselves all the time?
Yes, yeah, I have to.
And do you think that's okay, or do you encourage them to share with other people?
Depends on the clients. Yeah, usually I do not do anything. Just I watching. But if I had a chance now, okay, have a tea, like that kind of talking.
So your philosophy is also one of non-action. You don't really want to do very much of anything, right?
Acceptance. Yeah.
That's exactly how I tend to work as well. Yeah, but something is happening in the forest that has nothing to do with me. I'm not the person making the magic stuff happen, you know?
But probably your personality and the forest environment, both of them, is encourage the clients.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, the thing that I tend to do a lot of is encouraging people by saying there's no right or wrong way to do any of this. You are not being evaluated. You can't get an A+ or a gold sticker. You just have the experience you're going to have, and all of those experiences are okay. So you don't have to try so hard. You know, sometimes I think, especially with the relaxation, people can try too hard to be relaxed, and then they never get there.
Ben, that's an interesting point. I've got a lot of questions here in the Q&A from our audience members, and I'd like to throw a couple your way. Yeah. One of them is, either of you use any type of meditation skills when you're taking people through the forest to help them sort of let go of their preconceived notions of nature and just let them feel? I think that's probably a very important part of the process.
I would love to answer this, but I'd love to let Uehara-san start. What do you think?
Okay, yes, I use meditation in the forest a lot. For example, meditation in the forest. And after the meditation, what did you think about in the forest? And he said, I remembered my old girlfriend, but his problem was about his colleague in the building. But in the forest, his thinking and his images were changed greatly in the forest. His deep mind is coming up in the forest. So it's another effects of forest environment to change and encourage their feeling is coming up freely in the forest. Meditation is an important method in the forest too.
Yeah, it's interesting because I very consciously never call anything I'm doing meditation, because in the United States, people have a lot of projection of what that's supposed to be and what it's supposed to look like. They think, oh, meditation is this. So I don't like to call it a meditation because people start trying to meditate. But what I do is the beginning of every walk, I do an invitation we call the pleasures of presence, which is essentially a somatic meditation. So the intention of this is really to shift our attention and our focus away from our thoughts and into the somatic experience of embodiment. So once we kind of get below the threshold of our thoughts and deeply into our bodies, that's where we can have these rich sensory experiences that form the basis of our relationships to the more than human world. It's kind of like, obviously, the tree and I can't have an intellectual relationship except through abstraction or imagination, but we can have a very real and direct sensory relationship when we are touching each other or when I'm smelling the tree. Those kinds of experiences create a genuine sense of intimacy. So the entire point of the somatic meditation is just to get people past that threshold where they're not thinking about their experience, they're actually experiencing. I often note this Joseph Campbell quote when he said, I don't think people are looking for the meaning of life as much as they're looking for the experience of being alive. And so, yeah, that meditative, somatic meditation practice brings us away from the quest for meaning and turning everything into something meaningful and brings us into the body so that we're really just experiencing aliveness.
And do you think someone else is asking a question that I think is connected, that there may also be, he's asking a question about chemical connections that humans and plants might also have. And we spend so much time in front of our computer screens, like now, unfortunately, and we're picking up all sorts of electromagnetic frequencies. But when we get out into the forest, is there something different going on chemically with us as well? Iwao, would you like to answer that one?
Yes, of course, chemical reactions is important element in forest bathing and forest therapy, like a fragrance and also temperature. Water in the air is also stimulate our body functions and mind.
Mm-hmm.
And many scientists studied about chemical elements in the forest. And they discovered, and I discovered too, that some very useful chemical elements in the forest too, like a good smell. The smell makes us good concentration or good relaxation, good sleeping, that kind of chemical elements we have found so far.
So there have been several audience members who are particularly interested in your research relating to suicide prevention and how time in the forest can help people overcome suicidal feelings. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that topic? Because it's of great interest to our audience.
Okay. In Fukushima, even before big disaster, there are many people killed themselves. And Fukushima, Iwate, it's the northeast of Japan, especially the number of suicide is so high because at first, economical problems, and they did not talk each other on deep, real feeling. They were in trouble, but they cannot express their feeling inside freely. I'm fine, I'm okay, I can walk, but actually he's in trouble. That kind of gap, mind gap, happened in many people in Fukushima. And probably traditionally in Japanese people kill themselves sometimes for responsibility or philosophically.
And how do you think spending time in the forest has helped them deal with their feelings, communicate their feelings?
In that case, most of the clients have very low self-esteem. I'm not the person who can do anything. Very low esteem. I want to self-esteem increasing after the forest. So just relax and discover the ability of their own. Okay, I can carry the branches today, so I have still power in my body. That kind of self-esteem learning in the forest therapy session in
Mhm.
Fukushima Forest.
There have been a few more questions that have a similar theme relating to, spending time in nature and what is it about the Japanese attitude to nature and forest therapy that's different from practices in other countries. We had a question from India, actually, from an audience member in India saying that, well, it sounds like this term forest therapy was coined by the Japanese government official as a sort of marketing technique, but what the practice of spending time out in the forest, and I can think of yogis in India, they would spend a lot of time in the forest, and Taoists would go off into the mountains to be at one with nature. And there are many other cultures that have the tradition of, going and spending time in nature. What do you think is different about the Japanese approach to nature, the attitude to nature, that makes this a very uniquely Japanese practice?
In Japan and in India, both of us have natural disaster historically. So many typhoon, many land erosion. So most of Asian people have adapted our lives to the nature. But in Western countries like Europe, they developed the nature and making building. But we Japanese or Indian people probably adapted our lives to the nature. So forest therapy is like coming back to our home or our heart country. That kind of feeling we do forest therapy. So probably adapted our lives to the nature. It's accordance of human beings and nature.
Mm-hmm. And do you think in Japan that, spending time in nature with nature is something that's traditional, but has maybe been forgotten recently by a lot of people living in the city? And do you think that you're in a way reintroducing Japanese people to something very natural, a way to feel?
Some part religious tradition, but most of the time probably it's a traditional Japanese culture. So some philosophy professor said, we Japanese cannot distinguish between human and nature. So we feel trees and we, same beings in the world. That kind of feeling is different from other countries, I think so.
And we did have a question pre-submitted by an audience member asking about the connection to Shinto, which is the native belief that there are beings, that kami in nature, and that respecting nature will help protect us. So it's a really symbiotic relationship between humans and the natural realm. That's very deeply ingrained in the Japanese psyche and in Japanese culture. But there's a lot more to it than that. Obviously, it's a lot more complex than that. Ben, did you have anything you wanted to share about that from your observations?
Well, one of the stories, this is not so helpful for distinguishing between Eastern cultures, but to illuminate some of the philosophical difference between the East and the West, and it comes in the form of gardening. So people may be familiar with Western gardens like the garden at Versailles, and the intention is to strive for permanence and perfection, that the garden should always look the same. And in order to achieve that, you need an incredible amount of labor and effort and control to make sure it's always just perfect. And you contrast that with the aesthetic of wabi-sabi that's used in Japanese rock garden, where the beauty is not standing still. The beauty is in the change and in the transformation and in the movement. So the Western imagination of nature tends to want a static abstraction of what nature should be, whereas the Eastern imagination reflected in that aesthetic is that the beauty is that you can't grasp it, you can't hold it and keep it. You have to learn how to love it as it's moving. And I think that's part of the thing that really, like my research about this topic, about the Japanese relationship with nature, really trickles down from the roots of Zen and from Taoism that informs Zen, that it's like the beauty of the world is in motion. It's not standing still. So for me, that's been a big piece of inspiration for how it's this thing about learning how to see. How do we see the world? What do we see when we see it? And instead of trying to hold on and say, well, I want it to be perfect all the time, saying, oh, the perfection is in the imperfection.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask one more question from the audience, which is also a question that I share. I also have. So we're talking about forest bathing and forest therapy as something that's very healing. Can we get the same healing result from walking in a garden or walking along a beach or walking along a street lined with trees in a city? Does that also have the same benefits to us and to the natural world around us as forest bathing? Is it similar?
Yes, I think we can gain similar effects of forest bathing and forest therapy at the street trees too. But street trees are planted by human beings, so kind of artificial. So not deeply, probably it's estimate our body function or mind functions. So going to the forest is going to completely different space from the ordinary space. It's a first basic point of forest bathing and forest therapy. Yes, similar effects you can gain at park, street trees, but if you want to deep and real effects of forest, you should go to forest, of course.
Great. And I'm afraid we're going to have to wind this up. This has been fascinating. I hate to end this and end our wonderful stroll through the world of forest bathing. I can't wait to get out into nature and put down my phone and pick up a pine cone instead. I think that's sort of, I feel like that's the slogan here. I'm afraid we do have to end though. On behalf of everyone attending the webinar, I'd like to thank our wonderful guests tonight, this morning in Japan. Iwao Uehara and Ben Page for such an inspiring introduction to both forest bathing and forest therapy. And thank you to everyone for your wonderful questions. I'm so sorry we couldn't get to them all. I'd like to remind you all that we do have some more webinars coming up in August and September, including the next installments of our US-Japan Space Collaboration webinar series on August 31st, and our Business Sustainability series on September 15th. And we'll have as a guest for that one, the CEO of Motoyama USA. And you can stay up to date on all our events by subscribing to the Japan House Los Angeles newsletter. And today, when you all exit the program, please take a moment to fill out our survey so that we can keep providing content that's relevant to all your interests. So once again, thank you all so much for joining us today. And a huge thank you to Iwao and Ben for such a wonderful, inspiring walk through the forests. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.